All right, I'll say good day. As you say, on your planet. Happy Halloween. All Hallows Eve. Samhain. Whichever way you choose to approach the idea that this is the season of spirits, we will, in keeping with that theme, now remind you that the title of this transmission is Ghosts. Now, we do not necessarily say this to make you feel spooky or scared, but to simply go through all the different ways in which individuals that are physically alive may experience what they perceive to be ghosts. So we will start with the idea that is more traditional, in the sense of a spirit that is capable of lowering its vibration enough to be perceived by the senses of the living, that you typically refer to as a ghost, a spirit, when it appears in your world, in your reality. The idea being that spirits who pass over, as you say, who die, who transition, may not always go all the way for a variety of reasons. Some may have unfinished business on earth. Some, because of their belief systems, may not have had a particular expectation or assumption of what they would experience in the so-called afterlife, and thus be a little bit confused about where they are. Some even may not even know they're dead and are wandering, looking for reasons why no one can hear them or see them. But now and then, either due to a lowering of their vibrational frequency, sort of similar to the idea of invisible ultraviolet light lowering its frequency to become visible as part of the visible spectrum of light, going down into violet and blue and so on and so forth. If they lower their frequency, they may become visible to those in the physical realm, or those in the physical realm may have enough sensitivity to perceive that spirit, even though it may not always be visible to everyone. But for some reason, they are still closely connected energetically to the physical realm of Earth, due to some of the reasons we have said or other reasons, and thus are still in their mind living among you, wandering among you, occupying the old houses, so on and so forth, what you typically refer to as a haunting, which doesn't in any way, shape, or form have to be malicious. Simply another person in another state, living in a place among the living. But the idea is that in seeing these beings, there is no way without communicating with them to know the reason why they may still be in what is referred to as the lower astral realm, very close to the vibration of physical reality, lowering their vibration enough to be perceived by physical beings. And this is the older and original definition of an exorcist, sort of a spirit psychologist, to communicate, find out why that being is in that state, why they're still lingering around Earth, which doesn't always have to be for a negative reason. Sometimes, when spirits cross over, and they act, in a sense, as guardians, spirit guides, for those who are still living, there may be reasons why they can learn to lower their vibration, to interact with the living in certain ways, even to the degree of appearing solid as a living physical being. This takes some skill and some practice on the part of spirits to do this, because once you are in spirit and in that high frequency vibration that is generally invisible to the living, it is actually not as natural for a spirit to go back down into the lower vibrations and become perceivable to the living. But there are those who may have reason to do so, to appear to the living in certain ways, to deliver messages, or perhaps as a protector, to alert living people to certain ideas, certain situations and circumstances, be it dangerous or not. So those spirits may have a high degree of need to lower their vibration to interact with the living and be perceived as living people until such time as they raise their vibration again and vanish before your eyes. And so there may be great need to do this, or they may simply have chosen to practice the ability of raising and lowering their vibration in order to interact with the living for a variety of their own reasons, or agreements they may have made with the living people with whom they interact. Now, beyond the idea of it actually being a spirit, a ghost per se, that you're interacting with, that is live in real time, as you say, there may be other effects that exist that can be interpreted as seeing a ghost. And one of them is the idea that in the fabric of space-time, everything is recorded. You might say, again, as people on your planet often name it, the Akashic records have a kind of video sort of ability to record things as well as audio or pure information. And all that information is available here and now because everything exists here and now. So again, for those that might be sensitive enough, might extend their senses far enough vibrationally to pick up on certain things that may have happened, linearly speaking, in the past, and perceive the recording, it's etched itself into the fabric of space and time, they may be seeing a recording of sorts, an echo of sorts of things that have been, or even will be, in your linear framework, and perceive that as a living ghost, even though it is simply an echo, a recording, something etched into the fabric of space-time, and is no longer actually present. These kinds of perceptions will usually appear to be repeatable. In other words, a person may say, oh yes, this place is haunted, and at midnight, every 3 days, you see this woman walking down the hallway into this room, and so on and so forth. And if that keeps repeating, it might not be what would be termed a living presence. It might actually be a recording, repeating over and over again when the conditions are right to trigger it, or when the conditions are right in a person's senses to perceive it. So a lot of things that repeat themselves that way may actually not be a living presence. It might be, but it may not be, because it could simply be etched into the fabric of space-time and repeating on a loop. Another way that people might perceive the idea of a ghost that is not a ghost in the classic sense is the idea of peering into parallel realities. Sometimes the so-called barriers between one reality and another will overlap, will weaken, will align vibrationally in some way, shape, or form to allow a person from your reality to actually perceive, although perhaps faintly and dimly, people in other realities. And therefore, in suddenly seeing an apparition wandering through your reality, you might perceive it or think it to be a ghost of someone who has passed over, but in fact you are actually seeing a faint representation of a person in another reality who is just going about their business, but may seem to you to be a ghost. And they may be able to perceive you that way at that moment as well, and go back to their friends and family with tales of having seen this ghost. And they're just describing you, because again, the veils between the different realities may have weakened for some reason at that point, because these fluctuations do often happen. There are doorways and portals that open to different dimensions on a regular basis, and some of them are random, and sometimes these openings and closings can allow one in your reality to peer into other realities temporarily until they close again. And sometimes these are interpreted as spirits and ghosts when they are not, in the classic sense, such a thing. But the idea of this season is to allow yourself to open up to the potential communication that can exist between you and spirits, spirit guides, family members who may have passed on, soul family groups who may never have even incarnated. It is the ability of your senses to stretch into that realm, especially if someone close to you has died, and is encouraging you to stretch your senses to connect with them in the spirit realm. This is the perfect season and timing to allow yourself to practice this. And this will be the subject of our meditation today to give you an opportunity to do so. So, allow yourselves during your Halloween season, while having fun, playing scary, while having fun being spooked out, while having fun imagining all sorts of strange apparitions and so on and so forth, keep in a corner of your mind the realization that this, in the vibrational cycles of Earth, is also when the veils are thin between the physical and the non-physical. Because remember, the physical is just a projection of consciousness. You yourselves, in a sense, are projections of consciousness as physical beings. So you yourselves, in a sense, are all ghosts, because your natural state is as a spirit, and you are just pretending to be in a physical, solid reality. So you are all ghosts in physical reality, which itself is a ghostly apparition of a consciousness idea that you are exploring. So in remembering that, it can amplify your ability to remember that all of these spirits are right with you and you are right with them, still in spirit with them, while dreaming that you are not. Allow yourself the opportunity to feel that and maintain that connection and increase that connection between yourself and the spirit realm, becoming more lucid and conscious about the fact that physical reality is, in a sense, just an apparition that you're playing around in. And allow yourself this opportunity, because as we do approach the idea of the window of contact and the increase in the splitting prism into different parallel versions of Earth, maintaining and increasing your connection to the spirit realm that you occupy now, right now, as your natural state, will serve you in a variety of ways that we will go into the closer we approach to the beginning of the window of open contact, and serve you with the idea of making contact, because many extraterrestrial beings are extra-dimensional beings and actually have attributes, just as our civilization does, of both physicality and spirit. And thus, the stronger you connect to the fact that you are a spirit, as you say, not so much a human having a spiritual experience, but a spirit having a human experience, you can identify with us more strongly every day and allow the idea of open contact to be a broader experience with many different kinds of beings who are not just physical extraterrestrials in the way that you think of us, but occupy many different dimensional planes just as you do, who are simply aware of the occupation of those planes just as you can become, and therefore blending and melding and merging the idea of physical and spirit in a way that allow you a great deal of freedom, a great deal of expression, and a great deal of being your true self and expanding what that really means in your world. So be the ghosts in this season that are physical, and have fun when we do our meditation to expand your senses and stretch your senses into the realm of spirit. And to you, good day.
Hi, Bashar. How are you doing?
Perfect, and you?
I'm perfect as well now.
Oh, all right.
Great. Okay, so let's crack on. So, synchronicity.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about, firstly, you've spoken about your civilization and how you're moving from fourth to fifth as we synchronistically move from third to fourth.
Yes.
And you said that it was a different octave of consciousness altogether. So I'm interested to know more about that, if you can explain more about that and what methods you're using to navigate through that.
Well, again, the idea of moving into fifth density, which is also the same thing as fifth dimension, means you're going from physicality to non-physicality entirely. That's what we mean by a different octave. That's a euphemism to simply underscore the idea that you're going from a state of being that has some degree of physicality to it to a state of being that does not have physicality in the way that you're used to experiencing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And does it feel like different from when you shifted from the previous density? Does it feel more intense or?
Well, it is more expansive. In other words, your senses are expanding and capable of perceiving multiple dimensional things simultaneously. So it's like you're kind of walking through a dreamscape constantly, being aware of a much larger span of things that have to do with parallel realities and opportunities, different dimensions. These things become the normal way that you perceive reality, overlapping with multiple realities, multiple opportunities and options, multiple pathways simultaneously, rather than the idea of a singular path that illuminates only what is germane for your physical personality. So in the non-physical realm, you begin to also combine with the idea of your identity other aspects of yourself on a greater level and tap into multiple parallel opportunities and choices and synchronicities that are representative of your greater being, your more expanded consciousness.
You mean like the oversoul?
Well, you don't necessarily have to go that far right away, but similar to that idea on a lower level.
Okay, but we're only, in terms of parallel realities, we're only ever ourselves, and we're just always making connections. Is that right? We're only sort of one soul.
Yes, you as a physical persona have a singular soul.
So I can never be any of these other parallel versions.
You aren't. They are themselves. You can only, in a sense, be them if when you say you or me, you are talking about the oversoul level.
Yes.
So if you're saying I, as the oversoul, am all of these different entities and individuals, then yes, that's more precise. But you as a single individual personality, no, that's an extension of an oversoul, and therefore it is a singular expression.
From the soul perspective, I've got one soul, and all those parallel versions have their own soul.
Correct.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. Right, I've got a question for you here. So I want you to imagine now that you're human and you're on Earth now.
I don't have to imagine it. Remember that in the classical way of looking at things, the channel is one of what you call my past selves.
That's true. I just mean kind of from where you are right now, as you as an individual. So if you were speaking to an extraterrestrial now, the way we are to you,
yes,
from Earth, what question would you ask if you only had one question that you could ask?
How can I be more myself? That's why we've been delivering information to that end to all of you. How you can be more yourself. Because when you are your true self, everything else takes care of itself automatically. Everything falls into place automatically. So I would ask the one thing, as we're sharing with you in terms of answers, the thing that would allow all things to function more automatically and fall into place more easily, to be yourself and allow for unity and harmony to exist on the planet.
And that's following the formula again then.
Yes, it is. That's why we've boiled it all down to that for you, so that it's simple and you don't have to overcomplicate it or overthink it. Just follow the instruction manual. The way we have distilled it down is designed to exactly accomplish the answer to that particular question.
Okay.
Who am I?
Exactly. Who am I? I'm asking that every day to myself.
But all you have to do is follow the formula to figure that out. Remember, the formula doesn't leave anything relevant out. It contains everything and the answer to every question that's relevant and important for you that you might ask in your life.
But if everything changes except the laws, then the formula never changes, does it?
No, because that is a description of the structure of existence that doesn't change. It's how you use it that changes. It's your relationship to it that changes. It's your experience of it that changes. Your perspective of it that changes. But the thing itself, the structure itself, is the structure of existence, and that doesn't change.
Okay. You mentioned that
it doesn't change. Perhaps this will clarify it for you. It doesn't change because in and of itself, it's timeless. It just is in the now, completely and utterly. Doesn't experience the idea of time. Time is within it. It's not subject to time. Time is subject to it. That's why it is what it is and never changes, because you need the experience of time in order to have the experience of change. And it's beyond time.
Logical.
Yes.
So, you mentioned the Uber civilization around Bernard's star, that we would one day become first contactees for them. I just wondered what challenges and innovations they're going through right now, from where they are, from your perspective, that you can see.
Well, there are many different things going on in their civilization. One moment. Of course, one of the things that's most relevant is they are having discussions in many different circles about the possibility of life among the stars. It is something that many of them have been considering for a little while, and they have been using whatever simple technology they have to speculate, similarly to what Earth has been going through, as to whether or not there is life among the stars. So it's one of the things they are discussing.
Okay. And do they feel that it's possible? Do they feel that they're going to get there? Or do they have doubts the way we do?
Some of them have doubts about it, yes.
And they're not human, I take it?
They're humanoid, but they're not human.
Okay, so they've got some of our genetics.
Yes.
Okay. And what other genetics are they made of? Do they have?
There is no reference point I can give you for that exactly, other than the fact that they're not too dissimilar from you, and therefore they obviously share some genetics with you, but some of the other things that are combined in that are not exactly the same and are not familiar to you in any way I can describe.
And, in terms of synchronicity, the number 55 has followed me around since I was
All right.
50, every 7-8 times a day.
Yes.
And I used to think it was a bad thing, and then I realized it was actually guiding me in a good thing.
Well, that's the use of synchronistic numbers. Sometimes they'll act as road markers to let you know that at that moment you're in the proper state to be yourself and act from that state. It's like saying I'm seeing a road sign that tells me I'm on the right path and I'm in the correct vibration for myself at this particular moment. For you, the idea of 55 is like the number of double humanity.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Great. Well, thank you, Bashar. It's been a pleasure as always, and have a good day.
And you as well. It is our passion and our pleasure to interact with you. Good day.
Shiva.
Aveo.